We're going to go ahead and, can y'all hear that? Yeah, now. We're going to go ahead and get started. We've had a late dismissal in the House, and today we're going to have 2 hearings only. And so I'm going to open this in a word of prayer, and then we'll open with the first bill. Father in heaven, we thank you for the many blessings of life, and we pray, Lord, that you would look upon us and give us wisdom and knowledge and lead, guide, and direct us in the decisions we make. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right. Today, we have Representative Noel Williams, and if you'll tell us what bill number you're working off of and present what you've got for us.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I present the House Bill 1222 LC number 520062.
62. Okay.
You ready? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you all today a bill that aims to bring the state of Georgia's Transportation Network Company, or TNC, insurance code in line with the national TNC insurance model. In 2015, the National Council of Insurance Legislators, or NCOIL, brokered a grand compromise between the insurance industry and the TNC industry, resulting in the adoption of an NCOIL model bill for TNC insurance requirements. This model has become the standard across the nation for settling the amounts of insurance TNCs are required to provide. It protects drivers, it protects the public, and it ensures the interest of insurers and TNCs are properly addressed. Currently, Georgia's insurance code requires TNCs to provide 1 million in uninsured motorists and underinsured motorist coverage for TNC drivers engaged in the TNC service. Current requirements make Georgia an outlier in comparison with our neighboring states, putting our TNC insurance requirements higher than 37 other states and in line with states such as California, New York, and New Jersey. Under this legislation, TNC companies would still be required to continue to provide the following comprehensive insurance coverages. When the app on the phone, when the app is on and the TNC driver is waiting for a ride request, TNCs provide third-party liability insurance for covered accidents if the driver's personal insurance does not apply, which includes $50,000 per person for bodily injury, $100,000 per accident for bodily injury, and $50,000 per accident for property damage. When the app is on and the TNC driver is on the way to pick up a passenger or during a ride, TNC provide $1 million for third-party auto liability for death, bodily injury, and property damage. Uninsured motorist coverage only applies when the TNC driver is not at fault. This coverage is expensive, ineffective, and costs millions of dollars a year to provide coverage at an amount that is seldom, if ever, used. I hope that each of you will support this legislation and to keep Georgia in the #1 state to do business. I'm happy to stand for any questions or refer any questions to my expert here.
Does anyone have any questions for the author of the bill, presenter of the bill? Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the author of the bill. And my question is, tell us about the experience of the states that we're following in terms of what happens to passengers when uninsured motorist coverage would otherwise apply if that person doesn't own a vehicle, or what has been the experience so that we'll know what we can expect here.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. There are a number of other sources of insurance proceeds for individuals, for riders in the vehicle. Obviously, if the TNC driver is the one who's at fault, then the liability coverage applies. Any third party who's at fault, their liability coverage applies. If it is truly an uninsured accident where that third party does not have insurance coverage, then the individual's own uninsured motorist coverage applies. In situations in other states that have that do not have this type of requirement on the TNCs provide med pay coverage so that individuals' medical bills are still paid. So it's a different type of coverage, but there's still coverage that is provided voluntarily by the TNCs.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm sorry, I missed your introduction. Can you tell us who you are and who you're representing?
My name is Brad Nail. I represent Lyft.
Okay. I'm wondering if you can tell us how many accidents Lyft drivers have had maybe in the last year.
I mean, I don't have any specific data on that. There's a lot of miles driven, so there are going to be a lot of accidents, but it's in line with other forms of transportation.
Sure. Would you, while we're considering this legislation, would you be able to get that data to the committee?
I can talk to Lyft about putting data together that you might find helpful.
Yeah, I just think if, you say that the coverage is very seldom used. So I just think being able to see the data and the numbers would be very helpful.
Sure.
Chairman Lunsman.
Can you tell us what other carriers are required to have in Georgia in the way of coverage? Are they required to have this coverage you're asking to be removed?
No, sir. Under Georgia law, the only vehicles in the state that are mandated to carry coverage are TNC vehicles, not personal autos, not buses, taxis, anybody else, limousine drivers, and certainly at the level of coverage that we're required to provide. I mean, no one is even approaching that.
So can you tell us why this coverage was implemented in the first place?
Well, for those of you who were here in 2015 when the TNC law was first passed, Georgia was a little bit ahead of the national model that ultimately was the compromise that was reached between Uber and Lyft, the TNCs and the insurers, and then was adopted by NCOIL as a national model, and most states started to adopt that. So Georgia was a little ahead of the game there, and therefore all the terms did not reflect those model terms. And that's really all that this bill is seeking to do, is bring it more in alignment with the national model.
So in essence, being ahead of the curve, some things were put in place that, and because this was a different model, basically the rideshare platform or the app you serve primarily as a dispatch and a collection vehicle or entity for this, which is a little bit different than, say, a taxi or a limo, which is owned and operated by the company. So this being a different model, some of the things that were put into place were really sort of cutting edge because it was the first that we were dealing with this. And then afterwards, when the insurance industry started dealing with it in a broader scale, this model legislation was put in place, which did not include part of what you had agreed to when we put this into place back in 2015.
Yes, sir. I'd say that's accurate.
Okay. So just to be clear, you're doing something that taxis and limos are not required to do.
Correct.
And providing a similar service.
Yes, sir. To the extent there's similarities in that transportation, they have a completely different set of standards as far as insurance goes.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nail, that made me think of some other questions too. And I'll ask this for the sake of Lyft, but if you could speak, if you know of for Uber or other companies as well, what prior information about the driver do you require before they're hired as far as background checks or their driver history, things like that? What information do you know about the driver?
Well, with the with the understanding that this bill doesn't touch on anything to do with background checks. The current law does require a comprehensive background check, a criminal check, I'm working off of memory here, a criminal background check, a driving history check as well. They do have to show evidence that they have insurance on their vehicles. Those are the things that I can remember, yes.
Thank you.
One more point, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make is it safe to assume that our fees for Uber and Lyft would come down some portion if we do not have to expand this coverage?
Yeah, it's a significant cost issue. I mean, that's the reason why we came to you on this issue.
And how much does that cost?
I mean, I don't have any of the specific actuarial data, but it's substantial.
Okay. Do we have any questions online from any of this here? Okay, we have someone to speak to the bill, Mr. Pope. Yes, sir. Take the podium there, please. Tell us who you are and who you're with.
Yes, sir. My name is John Pope. I'm the president of the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association. Appreciate you allowing me to come and speak a few minutes today. I am speaking in opposition of the bill. I'll start by saying that, you know, I think it's been well publicized recently. In fact, 2 days ago, WSB here in Atlanta presented a report regarding the alarming uptick in collisions and fatalities on our roadways in Georgia. It's even the Mothers Against Drunk Driving have indicated statistics. It's up just in 2020 over 2019. There was a 20% increase in collisions. And so I know, appreciate the gentleman from Lyft was not aware of or weren't able to provide information about how many collisions are involved in rideshare rides. But one thing we do know is rideshare's usage is up. In fact, in the fourth quarter of 2020, they rideshares, Uber, not Lyft, but Uber, had 93 million users. And in 2020, they accomplished 5 billion rides, and that includes, you know, our children, our elderly people, our disabled people. So one distinction, though, between, I think this is why this is important, one distinction between ride shares and taxis and limos and other drivers is one thing that was pointed out. The ride shares aren't required to do background checks on their drivers. They're not required to do really any vetting on their drivers. And that's an important distinction. Uninsured motorist coverage, or sometimes we say uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, arguably that's the most important part of your policy if you're a good driver, because that's what protects you and provides coverage for you or your family. And in this case, the passenger, when there is a collision through no fault of the passenger. And so we know statistically in Georgia, there's somewhere between 10 and 15% of all drivers on our roads in Georgia have no insurance, zero. There is no data to tell us how many of the remaining drivers are underinsured. Georgia currently requires only $25,000 of coverage, which is what Lyft is seeking to do. They're seeking to reduce their amount of required coverage from $1 million to $25,000. I don't have to tell you how easily it is with hospital bills and medical bills to get over $25,000. So it's troubling. And this bill clearly reduces the protection to our citizens. And again, when we talk about who's riding, Mr. Representative Wilson pointed out how many riders that are using Lyft or Uber have no car, you know, disabled people, elderly people, disabled veterans who have no car, which means they have no insurance, which means this will be this coverage. If they're in a ride share and another person is at fault who is uninsured or has no insurance, this is the only coverage that they may have to afford coverage for their injuries. So I appreciate your time. I think I have made all the points that I want to make. But for those reasons, we oppose the bill. Thank you for your time.
What is one?
Yes, sir.
Something that kind of went through this vacuum of mine as you were speaking. What if that elderly person that hadn't got a car or whatever is riding with me. And I don't have $1 million in insurance. So how do we determine if we're a state that requires insurance? How do we determine who we're going to pick as a winner and loser, in my opinion? So why is me as a person carrying multiple people in a week, if I did, nice guy, going to take them to the grocery store, why would I not have to have $1 million? And that, what's the difference in me and that person carrying somebody else that doesn't have insurance?
Certainly. You know, obviously you're carrying me in your car. You're doing me a favor.
Sure.
You're not making money. We're talking about a commercial enterprise that is, you know, again, 5 billion rides in 2020 that is for profit. is about the cheapest insurance that you can purchase. And again, for many people, you know, don't have a friend like you to give them a ride.
Yeah.
This is their only choice. And so
But if they didn't ride with me, they might have to walk, but thank you for that.
that's right.
Chairman Lunsden.
Yes. Using that scenario, what if they rode in a taxi or a limo? What's the difference?
Well, the primary difference is unlike Uber and Lyft, the limo and taxi they do background checks. They vet their drivers. The Lyft and Uber has no background checks. And
This bill doesn't deal with background checks. This bill deals with the risk associated with that or the coverages provided for that. My point is, if they choose a taxi or if they choose a limo, and if we pass this bill and they choose a rideshare platform, then the playing field is level. But if we continue to keep this coverage in place for one and not for the others, then it's not a level playing field.
well, again, I respectfully disagree because I think the fact that a taxi and a limo has to vet their drivers is a big, much different scenario than anybody.
Please elaborate.
Yeah.
How is that a different scenario?
Well, because I think
Or how are the implications of that? How does that differ?
well, I think it differs in the sense that Lyft and Uber don't, quite frankly, I'm going to be direct, they don't do anything to make sure their drivers are safe. In fact, the way their business model is, unlike a taxi, they're not liable in the event their driver causes an accident. Their business model is such that they're independent contractors. So there's a lot of risks associated with Uber and Lyft that don't apply to potentially taxis and limos who, if they cause an accident, are responsible.
Please
legally.
delineate those differences. I'm failing to.
Well,
follow you.
so if a limo driver is employed by, let's use Carry Limousine, if they cause a collision with a passenger, their driver as an employee is going to be responsible legally. Carry Limousine will be legally responsible for the injuries to that passenger. Currently, under the law as it applies in Georgia, if a Lyft or an Uber driver is negligent and causes an accident which injures their passenger, Lyft and Uber are not legally responsible. Not at all. Somebody's shaking their head, but I don't know if he's a lawyer, but the respondeat superior in Georgia says that only an employee, you have to have an employee-employer relationship for the employer to be legally responsible. So the way that Lyft operates with its drivers is their drivers are independent contractors. They're not employees. So they're Lyft and Uber. I just had a case earlier this year where the Lyft driver caused the collision. There's no responsibility on behalf of Lyft or Uber whatsoever. Now, again, I didn't want to get off on that, but that was a question.
Okay.
Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to be clear on something. We're only talking about the uninsured motorist coverage, right?
That is my understanding.
Okay, so you're suggesting that the level that this bill will take it to is too big of a jump. What is the right number then?
Well, quite frankly, we just found out about this bill, I guess, on Friday, so we haven't had a whole lot of time to. I know we did meet with some of their representatives, but we have not had any really sufficient time to talk about maybe what, if there should be a reduction, what that should be. We just know that certainly going from 1 million to 25,000 without really a showing of at least we don't have it as what the need is and why it's necessary when what it poses to up to 93 million users, at least in 2020. That's concerning, especially with the uptick in collisions. So I'm not sure what that level should be. I wish I could answer the question.
Yes, sir.
Just respond briefly. I may not have been clear in my response to Representative Wilson's question because it's been said a couple of times that Uber and Lyft do not have to do background checks, and they do. They're required. The bill that was passed in 2015 under Chairman Powell's bill requires those background checks. That's what I was trying. I don't have all the specifics, but it's in the statute there. So the background checks are conducted, and also a significant number of taxi drivers are actually independent contractors. So his statement about there not being a respondeat superior relationship in the TNC world is correct, but it's also true. And I mean, I don't have the current number, but I remember being about 50% a few years ago. So it's a similar situation there as far as liability of the taxi company or TNC for its drivers' activities.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, today, any other questions from the committee or statements from anybody on the committee? Today was a hearing, and you'll be hearing from the insurance committee as to if it comes before full committee. Thank you. All right. Next, we have Chairman Lumsden with a bill. You want to go to the podium where you are, or what? 12? Push your button. I can. See what that's got it there.
There we go.
Tell us what your bill number is and what the LC number is.
We're looking at House Bill 1195. That is LC number 520061. This is a bill that comes as it's perhaps not really property casualty, but it does get into the property casualty area because it is a reporting requirement that the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, well, really not just them, but there are also the Municipal Association of Georgia. They are entities that are called interlocal risk management agencies. They are required to report to the State Insurance Commissioner's office because they have certain aspects of their operation that deal with insurance. All insurance companies are required to make reports to the Insurance Commissioner's office about things that go on within their operation. But the issue that we're dealing with is the type of reporting that they are doing. It was discovered, as is often the case, that even though they've been doing this reporting for decades, the form of the report is slightly different than what the law calls for. So all that we're doing in the bill is inserting 3 words, which provides the ability for them to continue to do what they've been doing. And the Insurance Commissioner's office is in fully supportive of it. We're just adding the phrase on line 14 of statutory accounting principles. And from a legal sense, that permits the ACCG to continue to do what they've been doing, yet bring the code into legal compliance.
Do we have any questions from anyone on the committee? Representative Wilson.
Chairman Lumsden, it seems this bill might highlight the fact that some of the laws that we pass aren't in keeping with generally accepted accounting principles.
Well, that may be true, but we're talking about the form that they're using. So all we're doing is trying to get the law to comply with bringing the law current to reality, not reality current to the law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? I've noticed what Ms. Representative Wilson said since I was about 20 years old. So that's 30, 35, 50 years ago. It seems like it's always been that way. But Any other questions from the committee? Anybody online? No questions? Okay, we will, we'll even let somebody out there speak if they want to. If it's,
Anybody from
To speak to the bill.
ACCG feel that they need to add to this, feel free to do so.
all right. Again, this is a hearing only, and that'll be today's business, and we'll be adjourned.
Thank you so much for being here.